Good afternoon to all at Dornei, and I'm going to start my presentation. As usual, I will use a PowerPoint that I will share with you. So let's go. Hope everything is well. Here it is. Bruno Latour and Transhumanism. Um, at Constanza, we had already spoken about Bruno Latour, the French philosopher and anthropologist. Today I'm going to concentrate this noon at one of most significant Latour's book, We Have Never Been Modern. It was published in 1991, translated into 23 languages, and curiously, the first translations in 1993 were in Portuguese, Romanian, Spanish, and English. What does he announces in this book? What is modernity that we have never been? And what does Latour's essay offer to us who feel modern and non-modern at the same time and don't quite understand how and why? Latour frames his definition of modernity in epistemological terms. He has not in mind a particular culture, society, or region. For him, we cannot explain man, neither nature, neither God, by zooming in and out, by going from general to particularities and vice versa. Pure moderns, to him, are those who subsume the plurality of the world under broad generic categories. The two most important categories would be nature and society. Physical occurrences would adhere to the laws of nature, human behavior would be understood in terms of the norms of the social world. When Latour insists that we have never been modern, he means that our existence has never in fact corresponded with the separation of soul-body or society-nature. We are mixed. Our daily experience shows a mixed hybrid reality. On the other side, we are modern. Modernity is an epistemological maneuver endlessly repeated. It underpins some of our institutions of Western society. It is reinforced by education and in political alignments. It frames a hierarchical narrative through which some nations and people argue themselves to be superior to those whose worldview has been left behind, the so-called non-moderns. He took a book from these two authors, Leviathan and the Air Pump, which documents the simultaneous birth of both modern science and modern politics. Shapin and Schaeffer's book, Leviathan and the Air Pump, propose that the 17th century authors Robert Boyle and Thomas Hobbes constitute the beginning of modernity. Through purified categories of nature and social contract, these two constructions stand at the threshold of the regime that was to define modern. Of course, Latour does not think the burn of modernity has taken place in this particular book or authors or moment. It's not a stable process, modernity. It's not a linear narrative. It is kind of an epistemological front, waxing and waning here and there in history, and evenly spread across different human societies. And this is why modernity designates two sets of simultaneous attitudes. The first set, he calls purification, creates distinct ontological zones of analysis. Human beings on one side, non-humans on the other side. The second set of practice, which Latour calls translation, creates new types of beings, quasi-objects, hybrids of nature and culture. So, these two sets are applied. Purification is critical thought, a partition between a natural world that was already there and a society with predictable and stable interests and stakes. Translation is kind of dialogical thought. This second set of practice creates mixtures between entirely new types of beings, hybrids of nature and culture, more to the object side or more to the subject side. You have here a kind, you can explore it further on with in our discussion of this presentation, what is to be modern and what to be non-modern. Pay attention, not post, neither anti-modern. Latour means that we are in a period of transition. Modernity is and is not with us, and that's how he explains that nowadays in contemporary culture, in contemporary religion, in contemporary science, nature and society are to be explained starting from quasi-objects. We are not dualists, at least we are methodical dualists. And this big scheme is not, I'm not going through all of it, but it shows in a very schematic way that we must retain the good things of modernity, and we must reject the bad things. We must retain good things from the pre-moderns, and also reject some of their delusions. And we must even retain some positive contributions from post-modernity, but there are other negative things that we must skip. And what are those things? What will we keep, according to Latour, from ancients or pre-moderns? Pre-modern collectivities were accused by moderns of mixing things. They didn't know how to be methodical, while modernity knows the methods of science, the methods of history, the methods of the social contract in social and political life. We are distant from the ancients or pre-moderns due to our great division from the 17th century onwards, the great division between nature and society, which is, by the way, an extension of the inner great division between body and subject. And there we have the beginning of modern science and modern philosophy and modern culture, the struggle of the ancients with the moderns. In contemporary age, we ended these absolute divisions through the benefit of the science of complexity, complexity in society, complexity in nature. Now, as regards society, anthropology and comparative history allow us to understand the pre-moderns in a different way, their totems and taboos. They were also seeking, as you can see here, the pre-moderns, for a kind of multiplication of non-humans, of a kind of temporality by intensity, of the non-separability of things and science. And these are good things. As we no longer feel distant for them, we can find again these qualities. But, of course, we don't keep from the pre-moderns their ethnocentrism, their tribalism, their their cosmological copy in society of the order of the cosmos, and so on, and so on. What will we keep from the moderns? Because we are and not are moderns. A lot, but not an exclusive trust in modernity itself. The greatest of modernity comes from the proliferation of hybrids, of expanded networks, of multiple vestiges produced through successive approximations of science, philosophy, technique, new approaches in religion. Its audacity, its innovation, its bricolage, its youthful sense, an even wider scale of action enabled the creation of objects independent of society and enable a society endowed with freedom. Modernity equates with freedom. We want to maintain it, but what freedom do we want to maintain? On the other hand, we cannot keep the illusion of generality. which is negative for some people and positive for others. The illusion of pure objectivity, of pure critique, of pure historical collectivity separated from the past. Such artificial life and such artificial intellectual stances are maintained by historicism, separating subject and society from nature, but always at war with itself. And what will we keep from the postmoderns, asks Latour. Postmoderns, such as the Frankfurt School, the various postmodernist sociologists, the deconstructionists like Derrida and other French authors. They felt the crisis of modernity, so they too deserve examination. Latour writes that if we take from postmoderns what they think about the moderns, their vices become virtues, non-modern virtues. What seems impossible is to preserve their despair, discouragement, nihilism, self-criticism. All these characteristics are delusional and dependent upon a conception of modernity that was never taken seriously in modernity itself. On the other hand, it's important to stick with deconstruction. If it becomes constructivism, it is no longer linked to self-destruction. The refusal of naturalism is also good, because nature is complex, and the refusal does not distance us from actual science, but brings us closer to it. We can retain their strong taste for reflexivity. As long as it is shared by everyone, it loses a kind of parody quality and becomes a positive attitude. Finally, the postmodern refusal of coherent and homogeneous time, like in enlightenment, is good if we do not fall into anachronism. So here you have just another scheme about We Have Never Been Modern by Latour, and it's a bit sketchy, but it's very interesting because the modernist genealogy absolutely separates nature from mind, body, and soul, and it separates what stands up there from what stands down there. God up there, society down there. But with revolution from the 18th centuries onward, these two parts changed their place. Society went up, God went down. The 200-year process of the death of God. But all this became part of modernity in struggle with itself, a struggle we inherited. And the book that very interesting in this way is Stephen Toulmin's The Hidden Agenda of Modernity. And Latour cites approvingly this work of the intellectual historian. He calls it a not well-known book, but astonishing. And Stephen Toulmin, in his book, identifies modernity in a similar epistemological structure to Latour, but with a different historical periodization. At the end of the 16th century, European attitudes underwent a drastic transformation. The humanism of Montaigne gave way to the rationalism of Descartes. So, Latour and Toulmin agree in the diagnosis. For both, the transition into modernity is to organize or regulate the contingency of the plural world by means of an epistemological perspective. The local is captured and purified by the global in modernity, the particularity by the generality. And that's not necessarily a good thing. So, coming to my conclusion, I would say that modernity evolved out of the mainstream of 17th, 18th, and 19th century philosophy and was anchored in the division between the institutions of nature and society, science and politics. What Latour calls the modern constitution introduces a host of overlapping dichotomies that contrast mind and matter, humans and non-humans, values and facts, the subject of knowledge and the known object, human society, culture and politics on the one hand, nature and science on the other hand. We are past this great division, this absolute and non-grounded division. And finally, Latour offers a concept of modernity that functions transversally to many of our established narratives. His work can be mapped into other accounts relating to early modern and Enlightenment political theory. It can be understood in broader terms as describing an epistemological front whose impact has structured human existence in analogous ways at different historical moments. His work provides a bridge by which genealogies of modernity are brought into dialogue with a new set of conversation partners, especially the broader tradition of cultural, religious, intellectual history. And that's it, my friends. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm ready for the debate.